Hello guys, how you all doing? Welcome to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how I was able to recreate this top exactly, and I'll be showing you in 3 different steps. The first step is how to sew an inbuilt collar that is perfect for your body type. The second step is how to draft a princess dart, not just for the front pattern but also for the back. And then the third step is how you can create this hourglass effect that you can see on the top. Trust me, if you sew this top without the hourglass effect, you will not like it. I'm speaking from experience, so just sit back and enjoy this video. Also, do not forget to like this video, leave a comment and subscribe if you haven't. This is the fabric that I used for this top. I have 2 yards of Ankara fabric here, and at this point I have another piece of paper on which I'll be drafting the back pattern. So the width of the paper is 16 inches and the length of it is about 30 inches. So the first thing I did was to take my measuring tape and measure 3 inches from the top of the paper, and I'll draw the straight line. The essence of these 3 inches is for the collar. Then at this point also I'm marking 1 inch at the other side of the paper as well, and this will be for the zipper line. Like I said, I'm drafting the back pattern first, so I'm just going to label this the zipper line, and I'll label the other side, the back. From this point now, I'm just going to be marking my chest line measurements. So to get a chest line, my bust line is 10 inches. So when I minus 2 inches from my bust line, I will have 8 inches, which is my chest line measurement. So I'll mark the chest line measurement on the other side and I will connect it like so. And I'll go ahead and label it the chest line. So from that point again, I'll mark out my back waist length measurements. Back waist length is different from front waist length. So the back waist length is to take your measuring tape from your shoulder through the back all the way to your waist measurements. Next, I'm going to mark my hip line measurements, which is 8 inches from my waistline measurements. The next thing now is I'm going to be marking my exact neck width measurements. To get the exact neck width of your body, just divide your bust measurement by 12. So my bust measurement is 33. Dividing it by 12, I have 2.75 as my neck width measurement. I'll just mark it there, and I'll also go ahead to divide my shoulder by 2, and I'll mark it both on the chest line and on the top of the paper like that, and I'll connect it. So from this point, I'll go down by 1 inch and I'll connect it to the neck width measurements. Now we are going to be determining the length of our inbuilt collar depending on our body size. If you have a long neck, then 2 inches is just fine. But if your neck is average or not very long, I think 1.5 inches would be more flattering on you. So from this 1.5 inches, I'm going to be marking out my back neck width measurements, which is 2.75 that I measured earlier. So I'll mark it there, tracing it directly on the 1.5 inches point that we marked. So now I'll just go ahead and draw a straight line like so. So from this 1.5 inches point, I'll go in by 0.5 inches. While on the shoulder line, I'll go in by 0.25 inches. And then after marking the 0.25, I'll use my French curve and I'll connect it like so. So with this, I have successfully joined my shoulder to my collar. So from this point also, I'll go down by 1/2 inch and I'll use my French curve and I'll connect it. I'll also extend it all the way to the zipper line for zipper allowance. And with this, I am done drafting the back neckline. So now I'll just go ahead and measure from the collar point all the way to the shoulder. I'll repeat the same process to make sure that I get exactly what I have there, and I'll write it down. I'm going to be using this figure, which is 6.1, to draft the front pattern. So just write it there so that you will not forget. So whatever you get, write it there. So at this point, I will divide my bust measurement by 4 and I'll mark it. While I will divide this line from the shoulder down to the chest line by 2 and I'll mark it. I'll go out by 1 inch from that point, and I'll connect it like so. So while on this point, I'll mark 3.5 inches, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. I'll connect it all the way to the hip line like so. So 1 inch away from your chest line, you connect to your hip line. So I'll also take a dart of half an inch on both sides like so. That is on the waistline. I'll connect it like so. Then from that hip line point, I'll go up by 2 inches and I'll connect it to the dart like so. So after marking now, the next thing, I'm just going to be drawing out the princess dart line for the back. So all you need to do is just use your French curve and connect it from the end of the dart all the way to the center of the armhole, which is that point like so. And this will be the princess dart for the back. That is the princess dart line for the back. So the next thing we are going to do now is to create the hourglass effect on the dress. So in order to do that, I'll be marking quarter of my waist measurement, which is 6.5 inches at the waistline. So in order to snatch the waist, I'll be reducing it by 0.25, which I think is okay, and it will not be too tight at the end of the day. So 0.25 at that point, I'll mark it, and now I'll be replacing the 1 inch dart also at the waistline. And with this, I'll just connect it all the way to the chest line like so. Another thing I'm also going to do is at the hip line, I'll mark quarter of my hip line measurement. And to create that hourglass effect, I'll be adding extra 4 inches to quarter of my hip measurement. After marking it, I'll be using my French curve and I'll be connecting it like so. So the moment I place my French curve, you can see the hourglass effect already forming. Next, in order to create that curve that is at the hemline, I'll go up by 4 inches at that side seam point. And then after going up by 4 inches, you use your French curve and connect it all the way to the center back like so. So at this point also, I'll extend the zipper line and I'll go in by half an inch from the zipper point. And I'll draw a dart. The essence of this is I'm trying to remove any form of bulginess that may occur at the back of the dress. So I've also gone ahead to add sewing allowance to this pattern so that when we are cutting, we will not add sewing allowance at the side seam. So when you're done, the next thing now is to draft for the front. And for the front, I've also gone ahead to mark 3 inches, which is for the collar. Next, I will mark the chest line and the bust line. And the next thing is to mark my front waistline measurement, which is 16.5. Like I said, front waistline measurement is different from back waistline measurement. So after that, I'll mark my hip line measurement, which is 8 inches from my waistline. So the front waistline measurement, to get it, just measure from your shoulder through your bust area all the way to your waistline. That is, you are taking a measurement from the front and not from the back. So next, I will also mark my exact neck width measurements like we did for the back, and I'll also mark half of my shoulder measurements for the upside and the chest line as well. I'll go down by 1 inch and I'll connect it to the chest line. I'll also use my rule to connect it to the front neck width measurement. So at this point also, I'll go up by 1 inch, 1.5 inch, which is the length of the collar that I want to use. Like I said, you can use 2 inches for yours if you want that, but I prefer 1.5. So I'll also mark 1.5 on the other side, and I'll measure it, drawing a straight line. So I'll make sure that the upside is also 2.75 as a neck width alongside the downside of the collar. So when I draw a straight line, from this straight line, I'm going to be marking 0.75 inches inward. Just like what I did for the back, I'm doing the same thing for the front. So I marked 0.5 inch inward while on this other side I'm marking 0.25 inches inward like this, and I'll use my French curve and I'll connect it like so. If the length of your collar is 2 inches, that means you'll be coming in by 0.75 or 1 inch inward, while on the shoulder you will still maintain the 0.25 inch. So while at this point I'm going to go down by 1.5 inches, and with my French curve I will just connect it all the way to this point like so. From this point now I'll go in by 1 inch or 1.5, depending on how wide or how open you want the neckline to be. So I marked 1 inch and I later increased it to 1.5, which I think is just perfect. So from this 1.5 inch point I'll connect it all the way down to the chest line, and this will be the neckline opening in front. Make sure you connect it all the way to the chest line so that your head can easily pass through when you are done sewing the dress. So now I'm just going to take the back pattern, and remember we marked that point to 6.1. So I'm going to measure the front, and what I got was 6 inches. In other words, the front is shorter than the back. So in order to correct that, I'll mark from this point, I'll mark 0.75 inches from that point like so. That is, instead of using 0.5, I'll use 0.75, and I'll connect it like so again. So after connecting, I'll also connect it back to the other side as well, and from here I will just use my measuring tape to confirm if I got what I have at the back. So when I measured, I got 6.1, which is just perfect for what I want. So at the end of the day, I went in by 0.75 on that side. So on the chest line, I'll mark quarter of my bust measurement. I'll divide this line by 2, and now I'll go in from that point by half an inch. So from this point now, I'll be drawing out my armhole, but I'll be using a dotted line because I'll be marking another armhole by the time I'm done drafting the princess darts. So here I'm going to be marking half of my nipple to nipple measurements, and I'll connect it all the way to the hip line like so. So I'll also go ahead to mark my under bust measurements, which I forgot to measure while I was drafting the vertical measurement. So just mark out your under bust measurements and label it at that point. So on the front waistline, I'm going to be taking a dart of 0.75 each on both sides. I'll take a dart also of 0.75 inch on the under bust line, and I'll connect it drawing a straight line like so. While from this point, I'll go down by 1 inch, and I'll use a French curve and connect it all the way to the under bust line like so. So by the time you're done, the next thing we are going to be doing is I'm going to be connecting the French curve to the midpoint of the armhole like so. And this is the princess dart shape. So from this point, I'll go in by half an inch, and I'll go up by half an inch as well. So I mark half an inch on both sides, and I will draw a straight line like so, connecting the armhole darts. So after drawing out the dart for the armhole, I'm going to be measuring the distance from one side of the dart, comparing it to the distance of the other side of the dart. So from one side I got 13.5, for the second part I got 12.75. So I'm going to be extending the shorter one by 1 inches just to make sure that they are equal for both the left and the right side. And I'll replace that 1 inches that we took for the arm from the armhole, which is on the chest line, and here I'll connect it like so. So this will be the new armhole for the front. Next, on the under bust line, I will take quarter of my under bust measurement, that is my round bust measurement, plus 1.5 inch, which is the dart that we took while drafting. While on the waistline, I will take quarter of my waist measurements. I'll minus 0.25 inch from it for the snatching effects, and I'll add 1.5 inch to it for the darts that we took while drafting the pattern. And I'll connect it all the way to the chest line like so. Then from the hip line, I'll go in by 2 inches, just like we did for the back, and I'll connect it to the dart like so. And then for the hip line, I'll mark quarter of my hip measurements plus extra 4 inches, which is going to give us that hourglass effect on the dress. So my pattern paper was not long enough for that 4 inches, so I just took extra pattern paper and joined it together, and I'll mark the 4 inches on that paper like so. And now I'll just connect it using my French curve. So from this point, I'll go in by 4 inches, just like we did for the back. I'll go in by 4 inches and I'll connect it using my French curve like so. So also remember to add your seam allowance, your side seam allowance for the front as well. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be comparing the distance from the chest line to the waistline for the back, and the distance from the chest line to the waistline for the front. If you notice, the back is shorter than the front by 1.5. So I'll be reducing the front by 1.5 from that bust line area, and I'll connect it to the bust point like so. So when I'm cutting, I'm going to be taking the darts from that bust line. So just pay attention to the lines I am following while cutting the pattern. So when I reach that side seam, I'll just fold in the darts like so, and I'll continue cutting. Then I'll use a straight rule to connect the chest line to the waistline, drawing a straight line. So with this now, we are done with the front. After cutting the front, we are going to go ahead and cut for the back as well. So just make sure you label the sides so that you will not get confused while you are sewing. So when you're done, just place it on the fabric and cut. In order to cut it, you're going to be adding sewing allowance. So to the shoulder all the way to the collar and the neckline, you'll be adding 0.25 inch sewing allowance. To that dart point, I'll add half an inch. While to the armhole, I will not add any allowance to the armhole. For the side seam, I'll add half an inch sewing allowance to the point I'm showing, and then I will not add sewing allowance to the side seam and to the armhole. By the time you're done, you just open it up, and this is what it should look like. So the collar, you can already see it forming. Another thing I went ahead to do is to add a gum stay to this. This is just to enable the bust area to be more prominent by the time I am done with the sewing. So I added it from the chest line all the way to the under bust line. I also added it to the side seam at the same point from the chest line all the way to the under bust line. And now I'll be joining the side seam to the center front using 0.5 inch sewing allowance that we added while cutting. So you sew to this point that is curvy, and you continue folding it like so until you sew to the armhole area. And you do the same thing for the other side, facing the right side of the fabric together. So after you're done with the front, I've also gone ahead to cut the lining. For the center front, I used the same fabric and I added paper gum to the collar area. So from that collar point, I added it all the way, as you can see. For the center back, I did not add allowance to the zipper side. I added 0.25 inch for the collar to the shoulder. No allowance for the armhole. I added 0.5 inch to the dart line and 0.5 inch to the hemline. for the side back, I added 0.5 inch to the side, the dart line, and to the hemline, but I did not add any allowance to the side seam and to the armhole. I will do the same thing like in front. I will join the center back to the side back using 0.5 inch sewing allowance. For the lining, I've also gone ahead to add a paper gum to the collar area, as you can see right there. So just do the same thing. So after joining, this is what it looks like, and you can see that the bust area is already coming out very well and everything looks very clean. So for the lining, I've also joined it, and this is what it looks like. So now I'm just going to be joining the lining to the fabric at the neckline point. So to do this, I'll face right side together, and I'll sew using 0.25 inch sewing allowance, which is the allowance we left while cutting. So after sewing, you are going to notch it like so. The notching is very important because the neckline will not open up very well if you don't notch it. So just notch it as I'm showing you now. So after notching it, you can turn it to the right side and give it a very good press, and you will have a very clean finish. So after pressing it, this is what it looks like for the front part of the dress. So now I'll just turn it to the right, turn it to the wrong side, facing the lining to the fabric, and I will sew at the hemline using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. I'll also join the side seam together using 0.25 inch sewing allowance. For the center, for the back, this is what it looks like by the time I'm done joining. So I'm going to join 2 pieces of it together like so, and I'll mark 3.5 from the collar point, and I'll sew it together. By the time you're done sewing it, when you open it, this is what it looks like for the lining, and this is what it looks like for the main fabric. So I'll just join the lining to the main fabric at the collar using 0.25 inch sewing allowance. So after sewing, you notch it and you turn it to the right side and give it a good press, and this is what you should have. So now we are going to be joining the zip to this, and in order to do this, we are going to close the sewing allowance that we left, that is the zipper allowance that we left like this, and at that 3.5 inch point that we stopped the sewing, I'm just going to notch it open like so. Please don't notch all the way to the main fabric, just notch only the zipper line opened. So after notching it, you turn it to the right side. This should be able to come out properly like so. So at this point, I'll go ahead and join my zipper, my open-ended zipper to it. But before I join, make sure you leave 0.5 inch at the hemline. That is, you join the zipper 0.5 inch away from the hemline points, because we have to close that hemline with the lining. So after joining the zipper, you're going to face right side together like so, and you're going to join the zipper line together using 0.25 inch sewing allowance. So you join both sides and you stop the sewing at exactly that 3.5 inch area that we marked. So I'm done joining the lining to the main fabric at the zipper line. I'll just turn it, I'll just go through the side seam and I'll turn it to the right side, and this is what it looks like from the lining point. So now I'll turn it to the wrong side again, facing the lining to the fabric, and I'll sew using 0.25 inch for the side seam and 0.5 inch for the hemline. So I'm done sewing, and this is what it looks like. I'll just give it a good press, and at this point I've also done joining the front to the lining, and I've given it a good press. So now I'll be joining the shoulder of the front to the shoulder of the back. So I will join the shoulder of the front, that is the main fabric of the front, to the main fabric of the back, and I'll also join the lining of the front to the lining of the back. So make sure everything is aligning. The beauty of your collar is your ability to stick to sewing allowance, the alignment and everything. So make sure everything is aligning, and then you sew using 0.25 inch sewing allowance. So after sewing, this is what it looks like. It's already done, with that inbuilt collar. So when you turn it to the wrong side, this is what it looks like. So now I'm just going to be joining it at the side seam. So you can go ahead and take your measurements at this point for the bust area and the waistline, and then you sew it all the way to the hemline like so. So I've done it on both sides, and as you can see, my waistline is very snatched. So next, I'm just going to be attaching the sleeve to this. This is a basic sleeve with a little twist. You will just increase the crown depth of the basic and sleeve by 2 inches so that you'll be able to gather the excess and create the puff that we have on the top. So if you want to see a detailed video on the top, on the puff, you can let me know so that I'll create a short video on it. So just gather it and measure it to make sure that you get exactly what you have around the armhole. And when you confirm that everything is equal, you can then join the sleeve to the armhole of this top. Thank you so much for watching. I know this video is really long. If you've stayed till this point, thank you so much. Please like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one.